Kia ora, everyone. I'm Helen, and some of you may have seen me before and heard me present. I am a registered nurse and now also work as a health improvement practitioner a couple of days a week in a GP practice, as well as an Ignite provider. I have specialised in mental health for many years. All my nursing career pretty much was in mental health. I used to be what they call a dually authorised officer, working in crisis teams in South Auckland. I left those roles probably about 12 or 13 years ago. I was very burnt out, so this is a very appropriate talk around that. I also trained to be a life coach as well. So we're going to cover quite a few things today. We're going to talk about the benefits as well as the costs of caring. So I know that obviously we've experienced some of the costs of caring, but we also know that we get some benefits out of it as well, whether it's through our paid work or whether it's through volunteer work. There is something that really supports us to do the work that we do, that we choose to do this job or this work that gives something back to us. I'm going to talk about the ways that we burn out. So burnout sort of covers a variety of different things. When we talk about empathy fatigue, which used to be called compassion fatigue, and I'll talk about the differences and what that is, sort of that emotional overload. And what are the signs? What does research say the signs are? And also, asking yourself, what are your signs? Because that's really important. And then we're going to look at some of the tools that we can use to sustain and support our own self-care. So firstly, what do we get from giving care? What is it that, what are the positive rewards that we get? Why do we do the role that we're doing? And part of this is that it does allow us to really deeply connect with other people. And if you're aware of Barbara Fredrickson's work, she talks about positivity resonance. She talks a lot about how human connection is a very positive experience, and we have moments, and she calls them micro moments of resonance that actually really supports us. And actually, when we have a micro moment of resonance with someone, our heartbeats start to synchronize with each other. And so when we're doing this role that we're doing, we have these experiences where we have the positivity resonance. And interestingly, this experience can also be had when we hold someone else's suffering. So, positivity resonance might happen when you're with someone, a good friend, and you're having a laugh, or you share a smile with someone, or you cuckoo with a baby, for example. But it can also happen when we see and hold someone else's suffering. The other thing that we get from caring is this real potential to develop empathy and compassion. And I like to think of these qualities or these values as something a bit like a muscle. And the more we practice them, the better we get at them, practicing this empathy and compassion. We experience and practice manaakitanga, and I love the Māori language and how when we separate these words, mana, we think about mana being authority and prestige, this inherent dignity and spiritual power of a person. And aki is holding or supporting this, the action of supporting, encouraging, and validating others. So manaakitanga, this upholding and enhancing the mana, the dignity and spiritual power of the people that we interact with. So this is a very positive thing that we do with people. And when we care, it can give us meaning and purpose. It really does feel good to do good. So we have this very positive aspect of when we give care, we get this really lovely sort of feedback, positive feedback. And so just a moment for you to stop and think about what do you get? What do you get back from the care that you're giving to others? So just having a wee reflection on that. Of course, we care in many different areas. Excuse me. It's not just that we care at work. We care for friends, we care for family, we care for our elders, sometimes our neighbours, our partners. And there's also this time stress. We feel like we're pulled in many different directions. So caring can also become exhausting, unrewarding, relentless, draining, frustrating, never ending. And in some cases, it's even traumatic because of the experiences that you might hear from the people that you're working with. And we as humans and we as carers are not meant to provide unlimited emotional support or be maximally productive or be socially and emotionally available all the time. And the other thing that we experience a lot more now is that we're exposed to worldwide trauma. It's not just the people that we care for or the people in our neighbourhood or the people in our whānau. We switch on the news, we're exposed to social media. And now we have almost, these sort of negative stories all the time. And it's actually really hard to sometimes disengage from that and find this quiet and peace when we're off work, when we're not, caring for others. And so we think about caring deeply is not the problem. But when we care without having recovery or having downtime, this can become the issue. So just stop and think for a moment. When was the last time you intentionally did something to recharge yourself? Was it this week? Was it this month? Or can't you remember? And I think about the word intentionally. This is really something that you've done because you've felt it's a good thing to do to support yourself. And sometimes these things that we do are actually about putting boundaries up or saying no or turning your phone off or not getting on social media, where we might just otherwise sit and scroll on our phone. So just have a wee think. When was the last time you intentionally did something to recharge yourself? Doesn't have to be a big thing either. It can be quite small. They don't have to be really big things. It can be going for a brief walk. It can be, saying no to something and spending an evening at home recovering or having an early night. It's something quite important to understand about our vulnerabilities as well. And I found this research really interesting. So for those of you that aren't aware about adverse childhood events, these are events that happen in our childhood. They can include things like being exposed to physical or sexual violence. It can be in a home, being brought up in a home that had a lot of domestic violence. It can be a parent that was in prison. And there's some very interesting research that suggests that therapists, nurses, and social workers report higher levels of adverse childhood events. So it's really interesting that we might choose to go into roles of helping other people. This might be shaped due to our own experiences when we were younger. And so this is perhaps very helpful in some ways because we can really understand what people are going through. We may have a high sense of empathy with people. We may have a high sense of injustice, which may really help us in supporting others. However, the flip side of that is that there's also potential for ourselves to be re-traumatized or at least have a remembering of our own trauma through the work that we do. And what the research has found is that those of us with adverse childhood experiences have a high risk of burnout. So this is just thinking about our own vulnerabilities. Within our roles and who we are bringing into our workspace, do we have a set of vulnerabilities? And to me, that means we need to really look after ourselves. We need to double down. It's not a defect. It's not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just acknowledging and understanding that. We know that people that have higher adverse childhood events experiences are more likely, for example, to experience poorer mental health further down the track. So we know that this can be something that can just add to our perhaps not being quite as resilient. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different ways that we run out of steam, and there's some different definitions around this. There's empathy fatigue. It used to be called compassion fatigue. And I'll talk to you why this is different. We talk about burning out. Burnout is very much experienced due to systemic issues within the work environment. So this is very much an environment that you're working in that there's too much work, there's lack of resources, there's long hours, and it obviously can happen in any profession. So we've heard about this a lot. Burnout can happen in any work environment. When we talk about empathy fatigue, this is what we might experience due to the chronic use of empathy. So this is when we feel the other person's pain and we're putting ourselves in their shoes, when we're helping people that are suffering. And this is a really important part of the role that we do, because we can't really be there for people if we're kind of monotic or machine-like about the care that we give. We do need to sit, we need to connect with people, we need to really, I call it listening with both our ears on. And this helps create that sense of being with someone in their difficult time. If we talk about compassion, this is about being with someone or feeling for someone, but also having the ability to take action to help. And this is where it's a bit different, because the ability to provide help reduces the likelihood of empathy fatigue. So it's our ability to help people that will actually support ourselves from being burnt out. So what are the signs or symptoms that your cup might be running low, or that you're on the verge of burnout, or that things aren't, quite right? And if we talk about the World Health Organization and how they define burnout, they talk about 3 specific signs. They talk about exhaustion, so feeling completely drained of energy. And it's that kind of energy that a few good night's sleep doesn't seem to fix. Cynicism. So this is when we feel very negative or detached from our work. We just kind of are turning up but not really engaged. And low ability. So feeling like you cannot do your job. So when you started your job, you were very enthusiastic and you felt quite empowered and you were, you're full of hope, and you realized that you could really bring some amazing things into your workplace or your volunteer place. You actually start to feel that, what's the point? What's the point of me doing this anyway? I'm not going to be able to make a difference. So these are the 3 signs that the World Health Organization expresses. This is how we express burnout. Empathy fatigue has got very similar signs and symptoms. And so there's some other things here I've put down. Irritability, even with clients. And you might have those occasional clients that push your buttons a little bit, and you notice that you're just that little bit more irritable. Difficulty concentrating. A sense of overwhelm or exhaustion. So I sort of mentioned that before about being completely drained of energy. This desire to withdraw. And so this is very interesting, because withdrawal can happen in different ways. We can physically withdraw where we don't feel like socializing, we don't feel like hanging out with people anymore. We can emotionally withdraw. We're not really giving anything to anybody anymore. But we can also withdraw through substances or behaviors. We might come home and think, I really need a glass of wine. And or maybe 2 glasses of wine tonight, and it can become a bit of a habit. So substances are sometimes the thing we go to try and calm down or to chill out. And also behaviors. If you think about, and I mean, I've done this, some days you come home and you're like, I just want to blob out in front of the television and not think, or I just want to scroll through social media. Like, it's like you're really switching off, you're really zoning out. You can have difficulty tuning off. And so this is really not being able to shut your mind down. Your mind is not shutting down. It keeps thinking, and perhaps it keeps thinking about things at work, and it keeps turning things over, not being able to switch your mind off. Frequent illness. So this is when your body starts to actually get a bit run down. Tearfulness, feeling quite emotional, neglecting your own personal needs, dreading giving emotional support. So I think this is a really interesting one as well. This is when perhaps, the phone rings and you look at who's ringing, you're like, oh, I can't speak to them today, because you know that they might need some help or support, or you're really struggling to give the support to your wider whānau. So that can be all like little signs. Is my cup running low? Sleep disturbance is another one. So just take a moment and think, what are your signs? What have you noticed? What do you notice when your cup is running a little bit low, or you're feeling like, oh, maybe it's time for a holiday or a break? On the right-hand side here, I've got this little questionnaire, and it's called the Professional Quality of Life Questionnaire, and it's something that you can look up yourself. And they've got a lovely online questionnaire which measures compassion, satisfaction, burnout, and compassion fatigue. And I think it's a lovely questionnaire to fill in, and maybe it's something that you do for yourself every 3 or 6 months, just so that you can keep an eye on where you're at. And maybe, you can navigate where you are on the scale. I've got some information on there, and that might help you sort of determine yourself, where are you on that level? How sort of burnt out are you? So it's a lovely tool to use. If we think about our signs and symptoms, we might think about this window of tolerance. And you might think about, when you're in your best state and you're feeling your best self, and you know that you're present and you're feeling really grounded and you're calm, and you can go with the flow, you're feeling really flexible around things, you've got good self-regulation, you self-regulate your own emotions, you're very reasonable. We think about this as the green area, the window of tolerance. And then you might notice when you, what they call hyperarousal, when you start to get a little bit stressed out, and you might notice that you feel a bit more anxious or panicky. And this is where the fight or flight system comes in. You might be a bit more irritable, a bit more quick to anger, feel overwhelmed. So this is that hyperarousal sensation. And then there's also the hypoarousal, and this is more when you go into that real withdrawal, that exhaustion, the numbness, the shutting down. So this is more of that freeze response. So if you think about that window of tolerance, and the aim isn't to always stay in this wonderful green space. We're not angels. None of us are going to do that. But the idea is to notice early. When have I just stepped out of my window of tolerance? Am I if I notice the last couple of days, am I feeling a little bit more overwhelmed, or am I a little bit more irritable? And the idea is that we bring in supportive habits that help return us to baseline regularly. So the goal, once again, it isn't to never go out of the window. It's to notice when we're outside of the window. And we'll talk about how we do this. Because one of the first things that we need to do, of course, is we need to have that self-awareness. And so I like this little quote: we are trained to be great listeners, but do we stop and listen to ourselves? Because in order to support ourselves, one of the first things that we need to do is have that self-awareness, really being aware of how you're feeling, and be able to have that reflection where you can reflect on how you're feeling non-judgmentally. Because often what we do is we We sort of think, oh, I'm so irritable, or I'm so cranky, or that wasn't very nice. And then we have some judgment about it. Oh, we shouldn't be that way. And, oh, you should be able to, I should do better. It's not that bad. We start to make these judgments about ourselves. So we have the self-awareness, we have the self-reflection, and that's the ability to reflect on this non-judgmentally. And then we have the self-compassion. And the self-compassion is about treating yourself as if you would a very dear friend. And if you think about the word compassion, which we discussed earlier, it's having the empathy, but it's also having the ability to do something about the way we feel. So that word self-compassion is how we feel towards ourselves. It's having the empathy, but also doing something about it. I love this quote from Jack Cornfield. If compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. And I think we as carers can be very good at being compassionate for others, very caring, often putting other people first. But like that old saying of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, if compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. So I'm just moving on to about how do we self-care? How do we look after ourselves? And what is self-care? And self-care is very much about sustaining your energy and motivation, about doing things so that you can last the distance, that you can remain resilient. It's about helping you to help others. It's definitely not selfish. And it's about enabling you to do the best you can in challenging times. And it's often when things are really difficult and when things are really challenging that we need to double down on our self-care, because that's often when our self-care goes out the window, unfortunately, because sometimes self-care is quite difficult to do. It takes a bit of self-discipline to engage in self-care. So self-care does incorporate a bit of self-discipline, self-awareness, accountability, and motivation to make better life choices. And if you've heard me speak before, you'll know I'm very passionate about these three foundational mental health, physical well-being, but also self-care essentials. And the reason why I go back to these again and again and again is because there's lovely research that supports that when we focus on these three things, we can really support ourselves to be more resilient and have better mental health. So if we talk about food and nutrients, and if you might have heard about the SMILE study, where they take a bunch of people who are struggling with their mood, they're diagnosed as being depressed, and they split the group in half, and they give half of them information on how to eat a modified Mediterranean diet, so really improving their nutrition. And they find that after 3 months, those who have changed their diet, a third of them are no longer depressed. So there's food that we can, good food, really good kai, nurturing ourselves well, that can impact how we feel. There's even some research that says that, there's a lot of junk food. If we eat a lot of junk food or soft drinks or energy drinks, much more likely to have poorer mental health and much more likely to be irritable. So, and they've done studies of prisoners and actually noticed that those that are more sort of volatile and anger, if they improve their nutrition, that goes down. So food and nutrients incredibly important as part of our baseline of self-care. Sleep and rest. So seems pretty obvious, but really putting this aspect of getting a good night's rest, but getting a good night's sleep, and then also getting rest, because with our modern lifestyle, it's not often that we truly turn off. We're often kind of on all the time, whether it's our laptops or our phones, that we don't do without. It's not often that we completely switch off. And movement and exercise. So movement and exercise has been shown to be as equal to an antidepressant in some studies. They take a whole lot of people who are struggling with their mood, they encourage them to do, and it's not a lot. It's not like you need to go for miles or hours of exercise a day. It's like 15 minutes a day can improve your mood. I certainly notice for myself, this is one of the things that I am least likely to do because I struggle. I think, oh, really, I can't be bothered. But I know that if I do it, I almost always will feel better afterwards. Almost always. So, do we prioritize these in our own lives? Are these things that we sort of look after for ourselves so that we can actually really support ourselves to be, you know, the best selves we can? Is there anything for you that you think, yeah, I could probably look at doing a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that? It's a lovely thing to come back to, and I love thinking about it as a pyramid because I think, if one's a little bit out of shape, there's not enough on one side, the pyramid gets a bit crooked, the little triangle. So it's a lovely way to think about these the basics really of self-care. We look at some other tools about reducing our load, and this is like reducing our cognitive load as well. So to be relieved of work stress, we need to meet two conditions: to not work and to do something enjoyable. And so how can we do this? And what's going to be most helpful? So if we take a break from work, and if we take a break and we go looking outside, even for 1 minute, what they've found is that it improves attention after you return to work. If you can't go outside, even just looking outside of the window is shown to be good enough. So taking really good breaks. Once again, and I do this too, often we take a break and the first thing we do is look on our phone. Can we look on our phone maybe for 30 seconds, check everything's okay, then can we go and do something that is actually going to be better for our brain space, our head space. Regular relaxation. This, once again, can be done at work. And this really changes our physiology. It changes our physical being. So if we think about something like the half smile. So when you're feeling a bit tense and you're feeling a bit frowny, actually putting a half smile on your face, you can practice this, is actually shown to improve your mood over time. So this is something that you can do. Just relax your face a little bit, put a small half smile on. Deep, relaxed breathing. Talk about that a little bit more. Slow down our breath. Really focusing on that exhalation, where we extend the exhalation. That helps our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest system. And also if we're feeling a bit sluggish or a bit tired, if we stand up and sit down a few times, this is actually very good for stimulating our blood flow and actually improves the oxygen to our brain again. So sometimes we're just sitting down for too long. Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down can be really helpful during the workday. Taking your phones off your desk. There's been amazing research that said that when participants had to do a task, so they did a research, they took a bunch of people, they put them in a room and they were giving them cognitive tasks to fill in. And they found that people who had their phones on their desk, as opposed to people who had their phones removed as they walked in the door, people that had their phones on their desk had a poorer performance. So they had lower accuracy and longer response time. So even just having your phone on your desk, for some reason your brain is still a little bit tied to it. So taking your phones off the desk and putting them away has been found to actually be better for your concentration. Likewise, multitasking is a bit of a myth. When we are multitasking and we're trying to, be on the phone and write something or listen to the radio or do a few things at the same time, it's not that our brain is doing two things at once. It's that our brain is flicking between different tools, different tasks very quickly. And this redirection of attention from task to task is actually really draining and exhausting and can make you feel a lot more tired at the end of the day. So just doing one thing at a time, focusing on one activity at a time can be really helpful. I like this idea of ruthless prioritization. So really identifying for you what actually really matters. And this can be when you're at home and you've got, so many things to organize or lots of things to do, really focusing on what matters and what you can control. So really thinking about, well, what's in my control? What can I manage? What's outside of my control? What can I have to let go? And what do I need to prioritize? And the last one, finding the tiny noticeable things. This where I got this from is called TNT, but it really is about attitude of gratitude, which we all probably know of, noticing the good, thanking others. So this helps when we talked about that positive resonance. This helps to create that again, calms the heart rate down a little bit. So that actually gets our body to be a little bit more relaxed as well. So this can be a lovely thing for us to do during the day. The more we do this, the more we can calm this nervous system down. So recovery is not merely the absence of work. It involves active restoration of the nervous system. So sometimes we really need to be quite active about what we do to help our nervous system feel balanced again. So this is for you to have a wee think about. What might you like to try? And we're thinking about taking a break during work time. Do you need what I would call wise boundaries? Do you need to say no? Do you need to make sure you get your lunch break and your morning tea break and an afternoon tea break? Are these things that are actually going to help you perform better rather than just pushing through and not getting a break and then feeling absolutely exhausted at the end of the day? Do we need more realistic expectations? Are we trying to do too much? Do we just keep saying yes, yes, yes? And we think, oh, it's all too overwhelming. Can we use a tool such as anchoring? So for those of you that aren't familiar, anchoring is about a physical object that you might have. It might be a ring that you hold on your finger, it might be a pounamu. And when you identify with this, you give this some, you call it your anchor. It's your strength, or it's your putting your hand on your ring, for example, might be the place that reminds you to stop and breathe. Or touching your pounamu might just help you feel grounded. So it's an anchoring tool. Great if you're feeling a little bit nervous. Box breathing. I don't particularly love box breathing, but box breathing is something that other people really enjoy. So that's that breath in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Or there might be another sort of breath work. For those of you who have seen me talk about this breath work before, this is one of my favorite ones to teach if you're feeling quite anxious or you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, is to imagine that you're a flower that's about to open. Your petals are about to open. And you breathe in. You can do this with me. You can breathe in. You move your arms. You're the petals. Your flower is open. And once your flower is open, then you melt like an ice cream. It's quite slow and it's deliberate, and your whole body starts to relax. And that's a lovely way of practicing a long, deep breath. Because often when we think of deep breath, we sort of do this, which isn't necessarily what we want to be doing. We really want to be slowing and calming. So this whole flower opening, melting like an ice cream. It's quite a lovely way. It really involves your body as well with this. Practicing mindfulness, being in the moment, one thing at a time. Shaking your body. It's quite a nice way to get rid of energy. So these are just all things that, you don't have to do all of them. You might think some of them are really not for you. That's totally fine. But it's just how we think. I know sometimes when I'm at work and I've been sitting down for a long time, I get up and give my body a big shake and just, release some of that extra energy that I might be holding. Brief karakia. Is it nice for you to just stop and calm? And do you have a karakia that you like to say? We talked about the half smile. And then there's other things like supervision, asking for help. And sometimes we need to stop and have some food. We need some kai. We need a cup of tea because we've been working. We're not stopping regularly. We need physical feeding. And outside of work, how do we take a break? Is it with talking with someone? Is that helpful? Bushwalk, nature, resting? Getting off your phone, I think this is a real biggie. Can you turn your phone off? Can you, say to your phone, hey, I'm all good, but I'm just taking my phone, I'm turning my phone off for the morning. I'm just really getting some peace and quiet. It might not be possible, but it could be something you could think about and putting it on silent. Journaling, does writing help? A daily ritual. Some people have a daily ritual that really helps them. They wake up, they might do 5 minutes of writing or 5 minutes of meditation. Time with a pet. We know that pets are wonderful for helping us be calm when we pet a pet. Listening to a guided meditation, catching up with friends, counselling, sometimes some time just to process the day. Just allowing yourself 5 or 10 minutes, no interruptions, just to process your day. Have a wee think. What did you do? What did you not do? Is there anything you need to write down so you're not thinking about it all evening? Write it down so that's there for you for tomorrow. Gratitude exercises, wonderful way of sort of reformatting your thoughts when you're stuck on things. Is like, actually, I'm just going to give my brain something else to think about, and a little bit of brain training. What do I really appreciate right now? Or sometimes it's just doing nothing, but doing it mindfully, just sitting in the garden with nothing, perhaps just listening to the birds. So what sort of activities do you do that help you feel less stressed? And what activities might you be doing that actually don't help reduce your stress? Because sometimes we do these activities that we think might be helpful, but actually they're not resting our brain. They're not the best things for us. And we know because afterwards we don't feel any better. It's just a reminder that self-care isn't about grand gestures. And even though it's wonderful to have a lovely holiday or, something like that, self-care is often about the choices that we make and the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis. So the choices we make and the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of what they call a self-regulation tool. So this is about how to regulate our own feelings or emotions or sensations or, a feeling of overwhelm, whatever we might be experiencing. How do we regulate ourselves? So once again, it's about self-awareness. So this is a tool that you can use, and it's the notice, label, and accept. So it's a lovely tool. You want to write that down: notice, label, and accept. So notice the self-awareness part. How am I feeling right now? Label it. Give it a name or a label. Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling exhausted? Am I feeling relaxed? When we label it, so sometimes it's sadness. When we label it, it helps to take the sting out of it a little bit. When they put people in an MRI machine and they're experiencing emotion and they get them to label the emotion that they're feeling, that part of the brain that was so lit up, just it dulls a little so that it reduces the intensity of that feeling. Accept. So this is accepting. This is what I talked about before. Not being judgmental, just accepting. Oh, this is how I'm feeling right now. No ifs or buts or why, or just, oh, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling annoyed. Feeling overwhelmed. And then the last of this is, what do I need right now? This is the self-care. What do I need right now? Do I need a walk? Do I need a break? Do I need a cup of tea? Do I need to chat with someone? Do I need to ask for help? So I think this is a big one too. We don't often ask for help. I certainly don't. I'm quite stubborn. I like to get in and do it on my own. But there are times when I think, oh, this is going to be much easier on me if I just talk to someone about it. Well, sometimes we need to make it, it's getting a bit more serious, and we need to make an appointment with a GP or a counsellor or EAP. So I really love this tool. Notice, label, accept, and then ask yourself, what do I need right now? And why is self-regulation so important? When we're working with people, and we can self-regulate our own emotions and feelings, we can better shift our psychological response from an emotional resonance, which is like that empathy, that really feeling for them, to compassionate action. When we feel, when we understand, but we can also provide that help. So I hope that makes sense, that when we regulate our own emotions, we're more able to help others. We feel better too, obviously, when we can regulate our own emotions, and we can. I think the biggest closing comment in any sort of care or therapy is being, oh, it's going to sound so trite, but being kind to yourself. It really is about being kind to yourself. And, I don't want to throw that around lightly, but self-kindness is one of the ways that we can support ourselves to move through difficult times, whatever that time might be. So, yeah, I think that's so important.